Mike, how you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah, it looks like this topic isn't the most exciting, so we don't have a lot here. So I can go over a little bit on how the settings work, and then if you have any questions, just about anything really, if there's anything else in particular you want to talk about.
Yeah, we're just trying to get it all figured out. So if you want to
Yeah.
walk through that, I'll take a look.
Yeah. So basically, inside of your account, there's a few settings that you could change, for a user. So basically, as an admin, you can click on my staff, and that's gonna show. Let me find this one over here. So you're going to see this basically team management. So anybody, you can adjust their settings. And so in the user permissions, there's two things. So number one, it depends on how you set them initially. So if you set them up as an admin, then it really doesn't matter what permissions you change because they could physically change them back. So an admin has access to the user permissions. The other type of setting is a user. The user is going to be restricted automatically into a couple of things. So number one, they're not going to see things like importing spreadsheets, exporting spreadsheets. They can't delete things. So there's going to be things right off the bat that are going to be restricted in there. They also can't. I don't believe they can create automations in there. So it's going to be a little bit more of a restricted access. But if you make them a user, then you can adjust these user permissions. So, and basically just by, turning these on or turning them off, so it is going to, see if they could see like, the dashboard stats or like the appointments. You can make campaigns read only, so they can't adjust them as far as how. Oh no, I'm sorry, not campaigns. This is an old item here. The workflows would be like read only. So they basically, this is kind of going to be. It may still show up in some of the accounts, but this is basically being discontinued. And
yeah, I still see it on my account.
Yeah, yeah, they haven't been completely turned off, but it's in the process of being turned off. They're recommending that no one really use them, because really, if there's any adjustments that are being made, they're being made to the workflows. Last year, before workflows were like completely released, basically you had to create a campaign and then you had to create a trigger separately. Now it's all combined into one thing. But like, this is a big thing right here is if you turn on only assigned data, if that particular person is not assigned to that contact, then they can't see it. So, that's something. It's similar in NowCerts, how we have a setting for only assigned insureds or only assigned policies or things like that. Same type of setting on that. So that's how you can restrict access in there. But really the other ones are if you don't want them to see that part of the system, memberships. And if you haven't used memberships, it's really good for training. So especially you can create those types of things. So these basically just turn on and turn off the ability to access those items. When you make, like I said before, when you make somebody a user, it's going to limit what they see on here. So these items would not be available, nor would the delete be available either. That's gonna right away limit how those settings work over there. These settings I would strongly recommend not touching. So the allow duplicate opportunity, that's explain the difference in a second. The allow duplicate contact, at least for now, is something that is kind of important, and especially in the case of an agency where you might have an insured that has a common email or a common phone number. So if that's the case, if you have an insured that has a common email and a common phone number, if you don't allow the duplicate contact to be created, then what's going to happen is if we've already done your import, it won't matter now. But every time you make a change to like an email or anything in that contact, if you don't allow the duplicate, it's just going to keep changing the same person. So it would just keep rewriting over that person. So let's say, for example, in NowCerts, you had ensured that, they have an LLC and then they have another corporation and maybe they have another LLC. Instead of creating 3 different insureds, it would create one, and just whatever the last one was, it would just keep copying it over.
Right.
So it's important, at least for the time being, to keep that on. That has been brought up to basically where we can, create some type of relationship within the system. But I think that's something that is planned for maybe the end of the year. But it is something that I brought up to them because of specific and other types of industries like mortgage and also other financial like stocks, bonds, those types of things. People in those industries have kind of brought up the same type of thing. So just don't unchange that, because we have it set up to where our integration, is basically, pushing that information, through API, and it'll create that, second contact. The duplicate opportunity is for, basically you have an insured that has home and then auto. It'll create both opportunities, the home and the auto. Now, there's 2 types of duplicate opportunities. There's one here, which is more of like a global one, and then there's one within the automation itself. So if you go into a renewal campaign, there's also the ability in here. So you can have it to where you might have it for that specific automation, you could turn that off. So that's why it's listed in here, but you can also have it turned off in that one too. The disadvantage of the duplicate opportunities, where I run into the issue, is when we recently added the ability to where if NowCerts has a renewal quote or the renewal policy, it'll update that specific contact and it'll update that opportunity. Where it runs into an issue is the second opportunity, because it's like considered a duplicate, is not getting updated. So it'll only do, so sometimes it's better to have this turned off first, for some of your opportunities. It just, where I run into the issue in my own agency is, like I said, with an insured that might have GL, workers' comp, and an umbrella policy. So they might have like 3 policies that are all expiring on the same date. And so you just have it create one opportunity for that. So that's a setting within that specific opportunity. Same thing on emails. So you can have specific settings for that email. You can, maybe you have like an email that you want to come from a specific CSR or from a specific person. So if you change it in here, it's going to bypass whatever your global settings are.
Okay, so the override is there.
Right, the override is here or here. So you can have it. So this would be for the whole, for that whole workflow. So you can change specifically for one email by the actual email setting, but like this would be the entire workflow setting. And as long as we have your email set up in either Mailgun or SendGrid, one of those things, the domain is the more important part there. And then while I'm in this section over here, there's within any workflow, you could change, times of, when things are sent. So for example, let's say I don't want to send things on the weekends, or I don't want things to go in the middle of the night, or, text messages and things like that. So if I put any time, that means that any time that is triggered from whatever happens in NowCerts. So let's say you do your downloads at 6 o'clock in the morning, if you have a workflow that is triggering that, it'll go right at 6 o'clock in the morning. If you don't want that to happen, we could say, okay, no, specific time. I only want it to happen on Monday through Friday between 8 and 5. And then what that means is if I were to do that download at 5:01, it's gonna then wait, and a 5:01 on a Saturday, let's say, it would then wait till Monday at 8 o'clock to put it into that workflow. So it depends on, what specifically is the thing. If it's maybe some type of like renewal campaign or something like that, maybe during the week is will work out for you. But if it's like a cancellation, then any day of the week would, make more sense.
Right.
So it just depends on, what your time frame is, or what you're looking for. If you want like some type of announcement to go, and like I said, you don't want to go on the weekends, then you could just not click on the weekends and then just, change it to whatever time. And the system would automatically know that you would see something in status of the workflow itself. It'll say it was added to the workflow at this date and time, and it'll say waiting. And the waiting is going to be, I think it's on this page over here. It'll just say waiting for the next available time. And it'll even say like, it'll say like, July 14th at 8 o'clock, whatever. It'll say next execution, July 14th. So it'll give you that. And then on the history itself, you can get more details of that specific step. So if you ever want to say, why is this thing not gone yet? I can say, okay, yeah, it's because the condition failed or something like that. It'll give you a little bit more details of, what specifically that step had. If it had an error sending the email, that the email address was, something wrong on that. So here you can change the settings on that. And then this allow multiple and stop on response. So if you don't want them to get 2 birthday emails, you only have 1 birthday, then you make sure allow multiples turned off. That means that contact can only go into that workflow 1 time. So if it goes in a second time, it'll get kicked out, because it'll say in the history, it'll say, and if you look on that clipboard that says the additional details, it'll say allow multiple is not active.
Yeah.
So it'll just kick it out. The stop on response is kind of useful in ones that you have a lot of follow-up steps on. So if you're continuing to send, reminder emails, and the guy says, hey, I got it, thanks, then this will stop the workflow. It could be good and it could be bad. If it's something that you wanted to continue that, and just make sure you turn off stop on response for the entire workflow. So it's and the response could be a text, and it could be an email as well. So it depends on whatever somehow they respond. And you can you could say, hey, can we create a workflow that has, if they respond to something, something else happens. And so just, let us know. And then we can, then, you can have a trigger say, okay, the customer responded. So basically the customer replied would be some type of, some type of a trigger. And basically in there, you can say customer replied, and then, via replied to a workflow, or they said yes, or they, the intent was positive or negative. So there's many different ways you could do some type of response, so that can trigger a different workflow in there. So, and we'll, if you don't want to do that, we'll set up the workflow for you. Just tell us what you're looking for. But if you want to get, if you want to, play around with it, there's lots of different things you can do in there. So this would be like replying to a specific workflow. Intent type would be like, a positive response or a negative response. And, or you can have it just say, please bind coverage can be, a specific phrase, and that can trigger something else.
Okay.
That's, so those type of settings are nice. Whenever you have any type of a trigger. Filters are good and they're bad. So if you don't have a filter in there, then this is like too general. So anytime somebody replies to any type of a message, that's going to trigger an automation that you might not be looking for. So that might, be too general. So, and I think I had someone where they had I forgot what it was. It wasn't customer reply, but it was something along those lines that every time a call came in, they were it was triggering so many workflows. And I want to say there was probably about 8,000 contacts that got added to a new workflow, and that's because it was too general. So
Right.
filters are going to at least say, okay, only if it happens with this specific case, or if it happens with this that specific thing. Any questions on, I guess, anything else in the system other than settings?